Chapter 19. And the Lord spoke unto Moses and unto Aaron, saying, This is the statute of the law which the Lord hath commanded, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, that they bring you a red heifer, faultless, wherein is no blemish, and upon which never came yoke. And you shall give her unto Eleazar the priest, and she shall be brought forth without the camp, and she shall be slain before his face. And Eleazar the priest shall take of her blood from his finger, and sprinkle of her blood toward the front of the tent of meeting 7 times. And the heifer shall be burnt in his sight, her skin, and her flesh, and her blood, with her dung shall be burnt. And the priest shall take cedar wood, and hyssop, and scarlet, and cast it into the midst of the burning of the heifer. Then the priest shall wash his clothes, and he shall bathe his flesh in water, and afterward he may come into the camp, and the priest shall be unclean until the even. And he that burneth her shall wash his clothes in water, and bathe his flesh in water, and shall be unclean until the even. And a man that is clean shall gather up the ashes of the heifer, and lay them up without the camp in a clean place, and it shall be kept for the congregation of the children of Israel for a water of sprinkling. It is a purification from sin. And he that gathereth the ashes of the heifer shall wash his clothes, and be unclean until the even. And it shall be unto the children of Israel, and unto the stranger that sojourns among them, for a statute forever. He that touches the dead, even any man's dead body, shall be unclean 7 days. And the same shall purify himself therewith on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day, and he shall be clean. But if he purify not himself the 3rd day, and the 7th day, he shall not be clean. Whosoever touches the dead, even the body of any man that is dead, and purifies not himself, he has defiled the tabernacle of the Lord. That soul shall be cut off from Israel. Because the water of sprinkling was not dashed against him, he shall be unclean. His uncleanliness is yet upon him. This is the law. When a man dies in a tent, every one that comes into the tent, and everything that is in the tent, shall be unclean 7 days. And every open vessel which hath no covering close bound upon it is unclean. And whatsoever in the open field touches one that is slain with the sword, or one that dies of himself, or a bone of a man, or a grave, shall be unclean 7 days. And for the unclean they shall take of the ashes of the burning of purification from sin, and running water shall be put thereto in a vessel. And a clean person shall take hyssop, and dip it in the water, and sprinkle it upon the tent, and upon the vessels, and upon the persons that were there, and upon him that touches the bone, or the slain, or the dead, or the grave. And the clean person shall sprinkle upon the unclean on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day. And on the 7th day he shall purify him, and he shall wash his clothes, and bathe himself in water, and shall be clean at even. But the man that shall be unclean, and shall not purify himself, that soul shall be cut off from the midst of the assembly, because he has defiled the sanctuary of the Lord. The water of sprinkling has not been dashed against him, he is unclean. And it shall be a perpetual statute unto them, and he that sprinkles the water of sprinkling shall wash his clothes, and he that touches the water of sprinkling shall be unclean until even. And whatsoever the unclean person touches shall be unclean, and the soul that touches him shall be unclean until even. All right, let's go back up to verse 1. As we once again are just continuing from the last chapter in these statutes, we found out the separation of in the last chapter between the priesthood and the levy, who were given to the priest to do the duties and to carry out these things. There was a ordinance given as concerning the tithes and what is to be done with the tithes. As the tithes were to go to the levy, it was their pay, it was their inheritance. They were not allowed to have any land, as well as the priest would receive the first part of all the offerings, as well as the tithe of the levy. And they should have no guilt because of this, because this is their inheritance. It's the portion, that's their pay, which they get, and they get nothing else. But we're going to pick it up here, continuing in these ordinances, in verse 1. And the Lord spoke unto Moses and unto Aaron, saying, once again, Hashem, he is the power of creation himself. That's the name, the holy name. It's separated, it's sanctified, belongs to Hashem. It's for personal use only. He speaks unto Moses, the one that's drawn out, unto Aaron as well, the light bringer. 2, this is the statute of the law which the Lord hath commanded, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, that they bring you a red heifer, faultless, wherein is no blemish, and upon which never came yoke. Here's the statute. This is the law. This is an ordinance. It's part of the instructions. That's the law, the Torah, those instructions which the Lord hath commanded, which Hashem has given, saying, and here they are. It's going to be, until the words speak, these words go out to the children of Israel, that's everybody, all those who face adversity, that they bring you a red heifer. A red heifer here, red is the color of blood. Red is that, and it's what the color of this heifer is, that appearance of the blood in the para. This is a heifer, a cow. It could be an ox or of the cattle. It's faultless. It has no blame, no blemish. Where is no blemish? There's nothing wrong with it. It's not nothing, any imperfections, upon which it never came yoke, and it's never been worked. 3, and you shall give her unto Eleazar the priest, and she shall be brought forth without the camp, and shall be slain before his face. So the cow, or the heifer, is given to Eleazar. Eleazar, he is the priest. Eleazar means to the mighty one of support, or the mighty one's helper. He is the priest, the one that stands before Hashem. She shall be brought forth outside the camp. That's outside the confounds of the camp, and shall be slain before his face, or in plain sight. These things would be done. 4, Eleazar the priest shall take of her blood with his finger, and sprinkle of her blood toward the front of the tent of meeting 7 times. And this would be in facing east. He would sprinkle the blood toward the front of the tent 7 times. 7 is always a number which perfects, completes, finishes, or finalizes even these things. Of course, this is going to be this sprinkle. His finger is simply something that works, manipulates the work. 5, the heifer shall be burnt in his sight. Her skin and her flesh and her blood with her dung shall be burnt. So the heifer, this red heifer, is going to be burnt in his sight, or consumed plainly in his sight. The whole thing, her skin, that's the flesh on the outside, her inner flesh, the meat. Her blood, it's that which represented the life. Her dung, as well as the waste, shall be burnt. 6, and the priest shall take cedar wood and hyssop and scarlet, and cast it into the midst of the burning of the heifer. The priest shall take cedar wood as well, and that comes from the tree, which you shoot down. The cedar wood is a evergreen tree. And this hyssop, as we find the hyssop's used in a way to apply that with the scarlet. A scarlet here is tolan. Tola is a worm. The scarlet refers to the color that they would get and use from that worm, and to dry it out. And this is the material that would be cast in there. It was used for dye, or to make something red. It's to cast it into the burning of the heifer, so it is thrown into the fire as well. Then the priest shall wash his clothes, and he shall bathe his flesh in water, and afterward he may come into the camp, and the priest shall be unclean until the even. So now the priest, that's the one who stands before Hashem, can wash his clothes, can make himself clean, these outer garments, and he shall bathe his flesh in the water. Why? Because this was all done outside the camp. He has made himself unclean. As we'll find out, these ashes are unclean. So he's going to bathe his flesh in water, and afterwards he may come into the camp. The priest shall be unclean until even. And after he has bathed himself, he's washed his clothes and bathed his flesh, he can come back into camp, but he's going to remain unclean until the even. And that's till the sun goes down. 8. And he that burns her shall wash his clothes in water, and bathe his flesh in water, and shall be unclean until the even. And the one that burned her, the one that helped burn keep the fire going, he shall wash his clothes in the water, and once again he's going to bathe his outer garments, and to wash these in water is basically simply to wash yourself in understanding, and bathe your flesh in that understanding, making clean the outer parts. He shall be unclean until the even, because you are unclean, as we'll find out. These ashes are unclean. 9. And a man that is clean shall gather up the ashes of the heifer, lay them up without the camp in a clean place, and he shall be kept for congregation of the children of Israel. For a water sprinkling is a purification for sin. And a man that is clean, we'll find out this man was already clean. Everybody that was involved was clean, and they were made unclean by the act. Of course, the ashes were unclean. As we'll find out, sometimes one must make yourself unclean to perform certain actions. But he's got to gather up these ashes. This will remains of that heifer, that one that is being used here. It comes from the greater cattle. Lay them up outside the camp in a clean place. So they have to be stored in a place that's clean, because they now, and it shall be kept for the congregation of the children of Israel for a water sprinkling. It is a purification for sin. And that's what the purpose of it is. It's going to be for the purification of sin. This is says the water of sprinkling. If it's used for purification from sin, it should have probably been called the waters of purification. I believe King James Version says the water of separation. And the word is nida. It properly means the rejection. We can imply impurity, especially personal impurity, as in ministration, the blood upon the flesh, or this moral idolatry or incest, filthiness, separation, you set apart, uncleanliness, filthiness. So the water is used as just that. It's to clean, in a sense, to wash away that, to purify you from sin, and that's going to be your shortcoming. That's we're going to see what this water is used for. 10. And he that gathers the ashes of the heifer shall wash his clothes, and be unclean until the even. It shall be unto the children of Israel, and unto the stranger that sojourns among you, and unto the stranger that sojourns among them, for a statute forever. And he that gathers the ashes of the heifer shall wash his clothes. He is unclean as well now, performing this act, gathering up these ashes, and be unclean until the evening. He's got to wash his clothes and his flesh. He'd be unclean until the evening, just like everybody else that was involved. It shall be unto the children of Israel, and unto the stranger, no matter who you are. There's one statute we'll find out for everybody, if you sojourn among them. 11. He that touches the dead, even any man's dead body, shall be unclean 7 days. And there's the law. It doesn't matter who you are. If you touch the dead, somebody that's dead, and there's going to be times we have to do these things. It's just the way it is. Sometimes we have to make ourselves unclean. The dead are unclean. Even any man's dead body. And it doesn't matter. The dead are the dead. We'll find out there's a lot of dead walking around today. They shall be unclean 7 days, and this is just as simple as that. It's going to complete the understandings, perfect these understandings. Somebody that's unclean has to be treated as they're dead. 12. The same shall purify himself therewith on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day, and he shall be clean. But if he purify not himself the 3rd day, and on the 7th day, and the 7th day, he shall not be clean. So that same, that one who's unclean, the one who's unclean 7 days, will purify himself on the third day. The third day is to make it strong, to add some strength to it, as a witness, the understanding. And on the seventh day, that portion that finishes it, that understanding, he shall be clean. He makes himself clean by doing what Hashem has commanded, by doing this act. But if he purify not himself, if he doesn't do it on the third day and the seventh day, he shall not be clean. So you got to do it both times. That's the thing. You have to keep the law both times. 13, whosoever touches the dead, even the body of any man that is dead, purifies not himself, he hath defiled the tabernacle of the Lord. That soul shall be cut off from Israel, because the water of sprinkling was not dashed against him. He shall be unclean. His uncleanliness is yet upon him. And whosoever touches the dead, this is anybody, it doesn't matter who you are, that touches the dead, to remain in sin is to be dead, even the body of any man that is dead. They got those that are dead, those that are treated as dead. That's just the way it is. And purify not himself. He doesn't clean himself, doesn't wash himself. He has defiled the tabernacle of the Lord. He's defiled the place of Hashem, as we're going to find out. That's that sanctuary. It's set aside. It doesn't have to be the physical. It can be the one it's held in Shem, and it's Shem, that tabernacle, that place. It doesn't have to be physical. The tabernacle doesn't have to be here. When these things are done, it's a simple fact that you have defiled it no matter where you're at. That soul shall be cut off from Israel, because the water of sprinkling was not dashed against him, and that soul shall be cut off. And once you're cut off, you're treated as dead. It's just like joining the dead, because the waters of sprinkling was not dashed against him. Because nobody dashed these waters. This sprinkling here it is to separate, as we'll find out. One got to separate himself, make himself clean, according to the law of this cleanliness that concerns touching those that are dead. 14, this is the law. When a man dies in a tent, everyone that comes into the tent and everything that is in the tent shall be unclean 7 days. This is the law. Here's the instructions. It's this simple. When a man dies in a tent, he dies at home, he dies in his dwelling. Everyone that comes into the dwelling and everything that is in the dwelling shall be unclean 7 days. And it finishes those understandings because one that is dead is unclean. 15, and every open vessel which has no covering, close bound upon it, is unclean. And every open vessel, this is anything, jar, a cup, a glass, anything like that, which hath no covering, there's nothing over the top of it, close bound upon it, and that's tight, it's unclean. It's simply unclean. It will need to be washed, cleansed, and then it will be clean. 16, at even. And we always represent the evening represents that is the end of a period of that understanding. We'll go to the next it's a continuance. These things continue. Then we can continue. 16. Whosoever's in the open field touches one that is slain with a sword, or one that dies of himself, or a bone of a man, or a grave, shall be unclean 7 days. And whosoever, anybody that's out abroad in the open field, outside the cities, anywhere out there, openly in the field, touches one that is slain, and one that touches somebody, they're slain, they've been killed with a sword, killed with something else, and they're dead. Or one that dies of himself, they're dead. A bone of a man or a grave shall be unclean 7 days. These two as well, because they are actually dead. And you can't touch their bones. Bones always represent the essence of a man. Or their grave, that place where they're buried. This is where it was a old thing, not to touch people's graves, not to step on graves, not to acquaint yourself or go too close to these graves, these places where the dead are buried. It's considered unclean. And it shall be unclean 7 days. And it helps to finish these understandings, because we have to do the greater and leave the lesser not undone. 17. And for the unclean they shall take of the ashes of the burning of purification from sin. Running water shall be put thereto in a vessel. And for the unclean, those that this happens to, there's going to be these times, and those that have to do these things, they have no choice. These are those that are unclean. They take of these ashes, that's what they were for, of the burning, that's what burnt the red heifer and how it was done, of the purification from sin, and these are to separate, to purify, to make clean again. The ritual, this is what it is, it's a ritual, the act that does the job. It's from sin into those shortcomings, the kata'a, your errors. This running water shall be put thereto in a vessel. So we take a little ashes, we take some of the water. This water is the understanding that goes with it. It all has to mean something. If it doesn't, what good is it? 18. And a clean person shall take hyssop and dip it in the water, and sprinkle it upon the tent, and upon all the vessels, and upon the persons that were there, and upon them that touched the bone, or the slain, or the dead, or the grave. And a clean person, someone who is not unclean, shall take the hyssop. That's because it's going to be used for this dashing, the sprinkling. It's insinuation. This is that which is used, and dip it in the water, that understanding, and sprinkle it, throw it about upon the tent and upon all the vessels, everything that's in there, all these things that can contain, upon the people that were there, that one that was affected, especially of those that are unclean, upon him that touched the bone. Make sure you get him. This one that touched that essence, or that slain, or that dead of the grave, any of them, all those that were made unclean. And the clean person shall sprinkle upon the unclean on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day. And on the 7th day he shall purify him, and he shall wash his clothes, and bathe himself in water, and shall be clean at even. And the clean person, the one that's going to carry out the act, shall sprinkle upon the unclean on the 3rd day. Of course, that 3rd day is going to complete the understanding, make it strong, give it a little witness. And on the 7th day, that'll be that portion that finishes that understanding, or even the ritual. On the 7th day he shall purify him, make clean himself once again, wash his clothes, bathe himself in water, get cleaned up. You shall be clean at even. And that's because there's a period to prepare. One must prepare, make himself clean, make himself acceptable, be ready to be made clean. 20. But the man that shall be unclean, and shall not purify himself, that soul shall be cut off from the midst of the assembly, because he hath defiled the sanctuary of the Lord. The water of sprinkling hath not been dashed against him, he is unclean. But the man that shall be unclean, this one that done this, or got in contact with the dead, somehow they've become unclean, he shall not purify himself, and shall not purify himself, this one that won't go make himself clean on the 3rd day, that soul shall be cut off from the midst of the assembly. There you go, cut off, treated as you're dead. That soul, that one that would not keep, would not do what Hashem has asked. It's really a very simple thing, because he has defiled the sanctuary of the Lord. To defile it, to treat it as it's nothing. It has no meaning. One's not separated. One's not sanctified before the Lord. The sanctuary is not. There's 1,000 ways you could go with that, but you don't have to actually defile the sanctuary. We find here by the act alone defiles the sanctuary. That's the sanctuary of the Lord. That place he set aside, he separated, he did it for you. It belongs to him. The water of sprinkling has not been dashed against him. He's not been purified. This understanding that separates, this understanding that makes you clean, he's unclean. 21. It shall be a perpetual statute unto them, and he that sprinkles the water of the sprinkling shall wash his clothes. He that touches the water of sprinkling shall be unclean until even. And there it is. This one who does it, this perpetual statute that's going to be forever unto them. He that sprinkles the water of sprinkling shall wash his clothes. He's unclean too. Why? This water of the sprinkling that makes clean. The act alone is to have to come in contact with those that are unclean is a unclean act itself. You're going to have to make yourself clean. Wash your clothes. Take a bath. And you're going to be unclean till evening, till the sun goes down, till that next understanding comes along. We'll find out till we can move forward. 22. Whatsoever the unclean person touches shall be unclean, and the soul that touches him shall be unclean until evening. So make sure you're where you want to be, because once you've been separated, one doesn't want to go around touching everything because you're unclean. Everything you touch is going to be unclean. Everything you touch is going to have to be washed. So it's a very simple thing, my friends. We need to get in line, get in order. When we don't do the things that Hashem asks, there's going to be consequences. And uncleanliness is like a wave that goes out, and sooner or later it engulfs everything. We're going to move forward to Numbers chapter 20. Turn and return.